Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Leader Show, where we talk key issues and news at the intersection of business and technology in hopes of making you a better digital leader. We're live Wednesdays at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the audio recording is available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Dan Goodstein. I head up IRPA AI. We're a professional association, media, and peer-to-peer research network providing education, networking, and advice to over 130,000 members globally, all around automation, enterprise AI, and digital transformation. Today, we're discussing, can AI keep a secret? Exploring confidential AI, plus headlines for digital leaders from the world of enterprise technology. Thanks to our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite, their cloud ERP helps provide real-time visibility into operational and financial performance. Podcast followers can get preferred pricing of up to 45% off. Just go to irpaai.com/netsuite for more information. I'm joined today by Chris Surdak. He's a senior analyst for IRPA AI, former White House Chief Transformation Office Advisor, partner for digital transformation at Gartner, and automation AI practice lead at EY. Chris, good afternoon, buddy. I missed you last week.
Yeah, well, no shortage of stuff to talk about, so I'm looking forward to getting back at it today.
There's a few headlines, right? The main story or group of stories, if you will, is Google's conference this week. Bunch of announcements coming out of Google. They're getting into the eyewear business, among other things.
Returning to it, let's not forget.
I mean, that's right. You said that last show. Yeah.
You can still buy the original Google Glass on eBay. They're pretty expensive, but apparently it took us about a decade to get over the notion of a glass hole, right?
right. Yeah, so they have a couple collaborations going on. One to develop the first ever eyeglasses that'll run an Android XR operating system. They're working on augmented reality glasses with Samsung and with Warby Parker. And bunch of new just AI, agentic AI search capabilities, and the announcement of an AI Pro subscription for the small fee of $250 a month, Chris.
Yeah, where do I sign up? I mean, I could pay rent, or I could get 66% incorrect answers from an AI that I actually want to get back to the glasses thing, because didn't Apple do something with smart glasses just a little while ago? No, maybe they didn't. Because that went really well, didn't it?
Yeah, nobody seems to be able to crack the code on this. Well, that was more VR, right? And then augmented. But yeah, I don't know. My thing with the Apple one was,
$3,000.
Well, I guess yes, but aside from that, this idea of people, sitting on a train with this thing on their head. I mean, it used to be you couldn't go in a New York City subway with like a fancy ring on your finger. You're gonna have a $3,000 headset on your head. Talk about a target on your head.
That's obscuring vision. Yeah.
I've always felt, I think I've said it before, I've always felt that this is more of a B2B technology, right? Better meetings, better presentations, better events, conferences, virtually. Actually, one of the things Google announced at the conference is this kind of, they didn't use the word hologram, but this three-dimensional person that can be created through a combination of their new platform that can take images and put them together and create a 3D image, and a whole bunch of cameras on a device that I think HP is going to make. So you have that kind of thing, right? More of the corporate thing. But yeah, for the average consumer outside of the gaming community, I don't know.
So when I was at HP 11 years ago, we acquired a company, Aurasma, that was doing augmented reality. And we had some really cool use cases. One of the ones that we promoted a lot was the idea of you put on the glasses and you walk up to like an airplane engine, and it would guide you with holograms and stuff of how to repair the aircraft engine, or how do you change the oil in your car. It was around 11 years ago, and it looked good then. It worked pretty well, and it kind of went nowhere. And I'm still curious of what the adoption issue was and continues to be. So it'll be interesting to see if it's different this time. I kind of joking about the original Google Glass. It was obvious that you were wearing basically a inline surveillance device, and so people really didn't like that. Where with the Apple one, as you kind of pointed out, you look like you're Aquaman or something, or you're on your way to scuba diving lessons. So beyond looking ridiculous, you're at least letting other people know that they are being filmed at that time. Where the new version of Google stuff, they're purposely making them like look like fashion lenses and stuff. So you're not going to know, unless you're very observant, that someone is literally recording you while they're talking to you, and in their field of vision is coming up your latest posts on LinkedIn or your latest tweets or your credit score. And I use those examples very particularly because they're probably within scope of what you're going to be able to do with these glasses going forward. So
yeah,
as we're about to have a discussion about privacy, this should terrify and amaze people, even more so because it's coming.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's more like pre-earbud Bluetooth earbuds, right? Like the Apple one has the thing sticking out so you can kind of see, but there's a bunch of manufacturers that had earbuds that you could almost not see, right? You see people walking down the street, you think they're talking to themselves. There's an earbud in there, right? So yeah, the glasses version of that. We shall see. An interesting thing that was kind of buried in a bunch of political back and forth about the Trump administration's tax bill. Apparently, one of the many things holding it up is a little stipulation in there that says that the state governments cannot regulate AI for the next 10 years if they want to get, I guess, state and local tax deductions as part of the new tax code. This kind of seemed like the burying the lead thing to me as I was kind of looking through, headlines over the last couple of days. This is huge, right? We talked about, the shift in regulatory kind of culture in the U.S. over the, with the current administration. But this is a big, to me, shot across the bow for the federal government to say, hey, we don't want the states doing this on their own and regulating AI.
It would almost make you think that there's something significant going on behind the scenes, right? This is why I love the argument of people like, well, the U.S. is a democracy. Actually, no, we're a federated republic, and that's a different thing. So yeah, the Constitution, which everyone loves to refer to, but I think very few people have actually bothered to read, it literally says there, all powers not specifically granted to the federal government belong to the states. And that's all well and good until you tie it to the purse strings that everyone's kind of addicted to coming from the federal budget. So absolutely a shot across the bow, absolutely telling. They always say follow the money. So if the money's saying, don't you dare regulate this stuff, leave it to us to do it, it probably requires some regulation. And, if it requires blackmail, it's probably something of interest. So, stay tuned. There's going to be more to see here.
Yeah. Yeah. The other story I wanted to get to, Chris, before we invite our guest to join us for today is Klarna is in the news. So Klarna is this buy now, pay later company, which you probably saw on a bunch of retail sites that you're on. But they've made some really interesting deals recently. They've become the exclusive buy now, pay later partner of Walmart. They did a deal with DoorDash, so you could actually pay for your food that way. But there's this issue that's come up where they have a deficit, $136 million loss from customers not paying them, which, I guess you could say, hey, big surprise. It's a buy now, pay later, company, but that number is up almost 20% over last year. So, a lot more people using these services, not maybe able to pay back. They're talking about 41% of their customer base is, missing payments. So that's an interesting tidbit. But the reason I also mention it is that they were in the news last year for basically reducing their workforce by over 20%, and deploying AI that they said would kind of do the work of all those people. Included in that were 700 customer service reps. So there's a couple different angles to this that I saw online. Some people saying, hey, turns out that AI didn't do as good a job with customer service as they thought it would. And so now they're going back and hiring people. Others saying, no, actually, despite all those issues, their revenue's up 15% because of that AI. So I'm not sure if you have an opinion on this, but interesting.
I want to go back to that Klarna's original pitch deck, and I want to see how they sold a bunch of VCs on we're gonna finance burritos, right? We're gonna put burritos on a payment plan.
It's one of the fastest growing segments. It's one of the fastest growing segments.
Well, so let's play this out. They're bragging that their revenues went up by $100 million, but they're losing like 40% of those new customers owe them money, and they're losing, what was it, $170 million off of that or something? This is the old, we lose money on every transaction, but we're going to make it up on volume. And effectively, it's a company that's extending a new vehicle of consumer credit. As you know, I have an Ivy League MBA. I've been in business for a long time. I do financial. This is exactly, I think every finance class I've taken, it should be retitled as How to Lie in Excel Convincingly. Because that's what this is. Someone is convincing you that, Walmart is showing all kinds of revenue on the books. The credit losses that they're taking because someone wanted to finance a 2 liter of Pepsi and they're not making the payments now, that actually falls over on assets, right? Because it's a debt that's owed to them. This is cooking books at a scale that is truly Olympic in nature. I mean, this is the decathlon of lying with numbers. I love it. These guys are amazing. If I could somehow go back and like buy into, well, I don't even know if they're public yet. They probably would never make it public. This is like deficit spending within Walmart. It's amazing.
Well, actually, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. So they actually were planning on an IPO, but they've postponed it, saying that because of the trade war and economic.
It's because of the trade war. Of course, it's not because like we lose money on every single transaction. And 40% of our customers don't pay their bills. That couldn't possibly be why we don't want to IPO.
Well, and actually, what's also interesting is that the Biden administration was pushing regulations to regulate them as credit cards. The Trump administration has since rescinded that. So we shall see. Of course, deep contrast to the UK. Which is looking to regulate this space pretty
well. And back to your other point, because it's totally pertinent to our discussion today. All right, so they did a whole bunch of AI. They either got rid of a bunch of people or didn't hire for capacity, and now they have to go to Fiverr and start hiring a bunch of gig workers because their AI isn't working, or it's not working as they proposed. How is this not the movie Groundhog's Day? How many times do we have to hear this story over and over again before someone's going to say, "Hey, wait a minute"? Yeah. I feel like I'm Elmer Fudd chasing Bugs Bunny, and I can never figure out why I can't catch him.
That's funny. Well, with that, let me invite our guest, Giorgio Natili. He's a former head of engineering over at Mozilla Firefox. He was the director of software engineering at Capital One and software QA manager at Amazon. Giorgio, thank you for joining the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So before I launch you into this debate that Chris and I are having, give everybody a little more details on your background and your expertise.
Absolutely. So, as you said, Giorgio Natili, currently head of engineering for Opaque System, company that is focusing the entire company effort on building confidential AI. Basically, we leverage confidential computing to build solutions that maintain data sovereignty, enhance privacy, and basically prevent many of the issues that you may see with AI, data leakages, privacy compromised, and so on. My passion in privacy and security, it's coming from a decade ago when I was at Akamai Technologies. Always had this angle in everything that I've done at Amazon, at Mozilla, at Capital One. And I want to say I'm playing with AI, ML, NLP since maybe 2018. So even before it became a buzz. and I saw the evolution, and it's interesting how to see now how powerful, potentially dangerous, and at the same time useful it can be, this technology. Passionate about helping others. I'm mentoring many people in the veteran communities, in the European communities, in local communities. I'm also pushing a little bit of my knowledge through the Tacoma Community College, a local community college that was searching for some AI content, and I'm doing this on my spare time. And super excited to be here. Chris and you spoke about many topics that are interesting in the first minutes of the show.
Yeah, well, at the risk of going completely rogue, let's just jump into it. So Chris, we were talking before we went live, and you already asked a good question to Giorgio. So why don't we start there?
Forgive me, I'm already switched on from that. What was the question?
You got all heated.
I don't remember the question either.
So
but
yeah, so
brain, Dan. Sorry.
So I kind of laughed when I saw the topic, right? Can AI keep a secret? I know Chris's short answer to that would be no. But Chris, what do you think? And then let's go from there.
Yeah. So we were talking before about given the nature of LLMs and neural networks and so forth, once it's trained, it's kind of, you're done, right? As you've heard me say before, you can't unbake the cake and get the flour and sugar back out. You can take steps to try to mitigate the anticipated problems that getting private data or sensitive data into the training data set to minimize the impact, but the likelihood of being able to prevent it is extremely low. And that means you have to take steps to anticipate and prepare for those sorts of failures. But I know, Giorgio, this is something that is near and dear to you. And the challenge is how do we provide highly personalized services with these technologies while not also putting people at risk because they know so much about you?
Well, this is a multi-million-dollar question, right? It's a topic that is evolving. Of course, you're right that when a secret is leaked, and there are mitigations that you can take. No mitigation is 100% secure and effective, but you can really do a lot with guardrails. You can really mitigate a lot of problems. The problem that you are mentioning is how we keep these secrets for real secret. Well, it depends on the use cases. Think about the simplest use case. You are interacting with a customer service. Let's talk about Klarna customer service, right? Where for sure there are sensitive data, social security, credit score, address, all the information that might be needed. And how you can manage that information in such a way that there is no risk that that data leak into an LLM, or even better, how you can manage these data in such a way that when you train the LLM, maybe in a federated way, you leverage weight, biases, but these data stay in a confidential environment, in a trusted execution environment. There is definitely a technology that can do that. That is confidential computing. There was an evolution in the past few years of confidential computing, starting from CPU, landing now on confidential virtual machines that basically can ensure a high degree of security, and you can build on top of that. It's 100% effective. It's impossible having 100% effective on it from a security and data privacy standpoint. But there is an exponential growth of your security posture. Think about a confidential virtual machine like something that, first of all, keep data encrypted also when they are in use, because the virtual machine is confidential, it's executed in a trusted execution environment. You cannot access these data when they are unmasked. So from transit and storage, you add a layer of data masked and actually data encrypted when they are in use. But on top of that, you can build attestation flows around it. You can continuously monitor the signature of the machine. And if there is a change, you can send the machine in panic mode, basically shutting it down. Data are not lost because data are transferred at some point, right, from different data sources into the confidential virtual machine. So there is a copy that is somewhere else, but the access to the data that are now unencrypted, it's prevented. And you can really configure everything. You can remove shell access. You can specify only a few ports. And as soon as something changes, also if an admin changes it, you can shut it down. So there are a lot of techniques that can bring you to do confidential RAG, for instance. When the confidential data aspect that is pulled by from somewhere else and go and start to play with the LLM is done in such a way that these data not only are in transit, when they are in transit are encrypted, but also when they are used by the LLM, can mitigate a lot of problems. Of course, there are techniques to reverse engineering biases and weight. But if the LLM is living into a trusted execution environment and then you shut it down, you are leveraging the LLM. Maybe you want to do something else with the bias and weight, but that's a separate story. But you can reach a pretty decent level of privacy. With that being said, I wouldn't send my social security number to ChatGPT, Claude AI, or Gemini, but maybe in a trusted execution environment, I can leak the last 4 digits.
So it sounds like you're kind of inferring abstraction of the training data away from the LLM and encrypting it so that it's not really revealed what the information is. If that's the case, and I understand it correctly, how do you then avoid effectively reanimating anonymized data based upon how it's consumed, right? Because so the questions that I ask in the so-called prompt engineering, I could take something that has been anonymized and effectively recreate its context richness and therefore kind of expose the underlying private data.
Well, if I understand correctly, what is your observation here is that anonymized data can always be reverted, or there are techniques. Actually, LLMs are great at doing that, by the way. But here the point is not that the data are anonymized. The data, when they are transferred into the trusted execution environment, are encrypted. So when they touch it, until they don't touch it, they are protected by keys that are owned by the owner of the data. Of course, if the key leaks, all the privacy considerations are going away. But if the key is stored securely and doesn't leak, then the key is used to unencrypt this data in the trusted execution environment. And it's at that point that this data became sort of unusable, because you have to crack and to enter into the trusted execution environment that, if it's this CVM that I explained, that can be sent to panic mode as soon as there is a variation in the fingerprint of the machine, meaning a port is open, a software is installed, then it became very hard. You can think about this technique like building immutable, kind of autonomous, but not in the sense of an agent, virtual machine that have their own ability and capability to exist without any external influence, meaning once they are spinned, you can remove also shell access. So they are really sealed, and they have the internal mechanism to shut themselves down, sending the CPU in the kernel in panic mode as soon as there is a variation. So once the data are there, you don't have anymore this problem. Okay, can I mask my data? Sure, you can, but we all know that it's not effective. The protection that you reach between the trusted execution environment, confidential virtual machines, and attestations, and to some extent also ATLS, that is attested TLS, that determine that the services that are communicating are really the services that are supposed to communicate within a complex environment. It's unprecedented. I've never seen such a level of confidentiality. To give you an example, we have a customer that I can't mention, but that is doing a lot of customer-facing application, a lot of customer care application. They had a problem. When you have to deal with sensitive data across whatever company, you start to have different policies, different owners, different data sovereignty. And to handle a case in this situation was taking a couple of days from the customer request. Now it's taking a few seconds, because different organizations inside the company, also if they have different policies, can contribute their data to the confidential virtual machine, because they don't lose sovereignty of the data. Nobody has access to that. to an extreme. You can think about Apple and Google deciding to run a study about the usage of mobile phones or glasses. And they don't want to share the confidential data, but they want to get the weight and the biases, or maybe they want to get the insights out of that analysis, sharing different data sets that are very private. Once these data sets are unencrypted into the trusted execution environment, it's a kind of the dream of every data scientist. The system, not the user, the system at that point, the script, the Spark jobs, whatever you are creating, have a sort of unlimited access to this confidential information, but they cannot leak it outside.
You bring up something fascinating. Not too long ago, I was watching the movie Midway, which was World War II, the U.S. Navy against the Japanese Navy, and the U.S. Cracked their codes. If I'm following you correctly, we're training the LLM with information that is in some way, shape, or form encrypted, so you can't really see it. The problem is, even with encryption, there's inherently an underlying pattern, and the LLM is going to pick up on that inherently underlying pattern. So does that potentially put at risk the encryption mechanisms that we're using to try to protect the data? Could I, in effect, because I've encrypted, but there's still an underlying pattern, could I reverse engineer and get back to the core data after the fact?
Well, everything is possible, but think about the use case that I mentioned. That's confidential RAG. So I'm pulling data, encrypted data, that I'm serving to a confidential LLM that is deployed into the confidential virtual machine, and I do things. At some point, once the request is over, the confidential virtual machine is shut down. So you are not training, but you are leveraging augmented contextual information, credit score, again, credit card, bank account number, social security, healthcare reports, whatever, right? And you are just doing one aspect that is confidential RAG. In the agentic world, it's even more fascinating because you can mix up summarization, RAG, to some extent, inference, right, into your workflow. And if the workflow is in this trusted execution environment where you deployed your model, you can do a very special workflow, agentic, and data doesn't leak out of it. Now, the problem that you are posing is, what about if I want to use that sensitive data to train the model, right? Because at that point, you may have interesting information that are part of a data set that can help to train a model. That's a different aspect, in my opinion, because it's not anymore the usage and the consumption of an LLM in a confidential way, but is more moving toward how I train a model without leaking any specific information or any information that can be reverse engineered. That's a different aspect of the problem, in my opinion, where confidential computing can definitely help, because you can run the training in such a way that the data are not accessible. So you are already implementing a very specific, you are increasing your security posture significantly, but the risk of biases that leak information are always there. And that's,
Giorgio,
I think, a problem is not yet solved. Sorry, Dan.
No, yeah, along these lines. So if I can kind of zoom out a little bit, I mean, you said before we went on the air something really interesting that, and I hope I don't butcher it. I'll try to paraphrase. Something to the effect of the real value of AI. It's kind of a paradox here, right? That the real value of AI will actually come from enacting it on sensitive data.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's think about healthcare. Okay, let's move away for a second from finance. If you want to run a study about potential cure for specific use cases of a cancer, specific medical situation, when you start to get really benefit from AI that can process so many documents at such a speed and extrapolate for you the insights that you need to make your next step into a diagnosis or specifying a drug or picking up a cure, whatever. It's when you start to have access to patient data that had that pathology before, that case of cancer. At that point, you are accessing super sensitive information. And if you can be sure that sensitive information are not leaking, are not neither training the model, so they are not leaving additional information in the model, you are getting the benefit of an LLM that parts these multiple data sources and generate the insights for you. That's why I think having access to very sensitive data, it's exponentially increasing the power of AI. At the same time, it's also posing a set of responsibilities on system integrator, people that is building this technology, to maintain a high level of confidentiality and privacy. Confidential computing also in this case can help you to be compliant almost out of the box with HIPAA, GPRC, with many regulations. And this is another advantage that can move even faster. The research can move even faster the development of new technologies. Once you have the report and you have the insights are not anymore bounded to a single person. When you can mix multiple insights generated by different LLM, different studies, different data set. Imagine hospitals that collaborate on data set without sharing the data set. Then you amplify the volume of your data and the accuracy of the prediction of the model are increased.
Giorgio, does that bring up questions of trust, though? So, hallucination is a big issue out there these days. So, if the training data or the comparator is not visible, how would you know when you can trust the result?
Well, when you're speaking about such sensitive topics, the data set, if it should come from attested or well-known sources, where we're talking about multiple hospitals that are collaborating on multiple data sets, of course, data can be inaccurate, right? There is always a problem. I don't think AI, so let me make it clear, I don't think AI can replace jobs at the moment, maybe in the future, I'm not excluding that, but I think that AI can give superpowers to workers that can now be more effective. And I'm using the word effective and not the word productive because it's very important. It's not the volume here. It's the ability of leveraging multiple data sources at a speed that is unprecedented. With that being said, once you have a healthcare study, you are using data sets that are coming from hospitals or institutions that can verify their data, and they're verifiable. I'm not talking about using these techniques, mixing a database that you have at home, I have at home, and then as at home. That will be, of course, not granting any value because we don't have any skills to determine that the data that we have are accurate, are an effective representation of a specific part of the population or a specific disease. So there is always this problem, right? You can build whatever. If data sources are not accurate, you get predictions that are completely off. And this it's another problem that is how you verify that the data are accurate. Then from a technology standpoint, I can verify that the data set that you're sending me is exactly the one that is supposed to be there through a TLS, that is attested TLS, basically. And you can improve that level of security, but you can't remove the fact that AI can be extremely wrong. AI can be biased. Your prompt bias AI. If you ask to ChatGPT, are bananas dangerous? Oh my God, you should never eat a banana in your life. If you ask in a new separate prompt, are bananas healthy? Oh my God, eat all the bananas that you want. So simply how you prompt generate bias. So that's, I think, why it's posing a very interesting question, but it's something that I can't control unless I start to set up specific guardrails, right? Maybe using Nemo guardrails, and I can also fine-tune how the prompting is done against a system that can be biased by the prompt itself.
So, Giorgio,
it's a bit of a funhouse mirror.
Say it again, sorry, Chris.
sorry, Dan, it's a bit of a funhouse mirror. What it reflects back what you
Absolutely.
presented, and it's usually distorted like a funhouse mirror.
Absolutely. Let me add on this. It's like when you search something on Google. If you want to validate your assumption that bananas are dangerous,
You'll figure it out.
Google will give you that information.
Yeah.
The LLM are different, but at the same time, they can be biased. It's how you search that will confirm or deny your beliefs. So, prompting is an art. Fast prompting is dangerous. Kids, people with no technical background, really can get whatever from AI. There was a book that I read when I was in elementary school. So, oh my God, decades ago, when there was an Englishman that went to the library and got a book with all the potential diseases, started to read the book, and come out after the reading saying, well, okay, I have all the diseases except one. My knee is safe. So, of course, right? You can be biased by what you read, and that's an example of how you can bias an LLM, or you can bias the result of a search engine.
100% true. I had to disconnect the internet in my house when my wife was pregnant because she thought she had every possible issue that was out there. I had a Dr. Google, as her doctor would call it. So, Giorgio, Chris and I always, have this kind of talking point around, hey, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product, right? That whole adage. Talk to me about data sovereignty. Is this a human right in the digital age, in the AI world? Do we even have a right to this anymore? Or is this just kind of the way of the world now? We should just kind of give up thinking that it's a right.
Absolutely. So I don't think I shared with you what I wrote recently. I wrote a chapter of a book that is going to be published end of September that is about AI, of course. And my chapter is Engineering the Future, AI, Privacy, and the Rise of Agent-Driven Economy. Over there, I speak exactly in the term that you used, that is, data sovereignty is part of human dignity. Think about your personal data. You must own how the data are shared and how they are managed. But think even a little bit bigger. Think about indigenous population, that maybe they don't have the knowledge and understanding of how their data are used. In their art, maybe now it's in an LLM that is generating wonderful background images for Zoom or for whatever system you want based on their art, and they are unaware of it. So we should not give up our dignity at any time, in any context, and we should be extremely vocal in supporting organizations and companies that are investing on standards and on regulation. I'm originally from Europe. In Europe, we have a bigger number and stricter regulations that here in the US, and I think it's very good. Of course, it's a limitation for progress. No, it's a constraint, and it's a positive one. There are projects like Agency, that has a very, very weird spelling, AGNTCY, that contain a lot of specification on how to use MCP and other protocols to maintain privacy and govern how agents are using your data. One big piece that is missing over there, it's exactly how the agents will manage unencrypted data, and they will do maybe federated learning, another interesting aspect. But I think that following projects like Agency, contributing, having these discussions, simply you then asking to me this question, it's an opportunity to amplify a message where we should not give our data up. The challenge I usually give to people is ask ChatGPT what it knows about you. You will be impressed. If you don't change your privacy setting, or that's the same for Claude AI and for Gemini, although Claude AI is doing an even better job setting up some default constraints that you don't have to tweak. But it's impressive. ChatGPT, after a few weeks of usage, were fully aware that I'm a long-distance runner. So, I don't know if I really ever told you that. So, so yes, data sovereignty, it's part of human dignity. Fight for it. Try to also understand that at some points you have constraints, right? There are privacy regulations or privacy policies. You have to accept them all. Fight for that. There are services that have different privacy policies that are split for different aspects. In Europe, it's pretty common. You have one about the agreement of the service, one how they can treat your data, and how they can market you. In the US, it's not yet like this, but I think that we have also forums and opportunities to keep talking about it and influence what is going to happen from a regulatory standpoint.
So you're saying that if I ignore ChatGPT, it's not going to ignore me? I guess I'm still in there, huh?
Yes, to the point that Chris made. Once data are in LLM, you can guardrail them, right? But they're there.
Yeah. So how do you guard it, right? So from an individual standpoint, I've always been fascinated by, my observation is it's this balancing act between, to your point earlier about some of the better implications or applications of AI, this balance of giving data so I get good data in, good outcome, right? Balancing that with privacy. And I have these debates with family members who are not in the technology space about what's the downside to putting certain information out there if you're going to get the upside value of it. What's your advice as someone who's designed these systems? I'm not sure if you could talk about any specifics in some of your past organizations, but what's your advice as to how people can balance that risk?
Yes, you mentioned two very interesting points. One is how to design a system. Well, the system should be designed with privacy first. Firefox is a browser that has very enhanced privacy protection, and it's still doing its job. Firefox is capable of rendering web page and doing whatever you do in Chrome with a high level of privacy. There are less features, yes. Less rich than Chrome, yes. That's when you pay with your data. When you use a better browser like Chrome, or a more, I don't want to say a better browser, I want to say a more rich browser, you are paying with your data. So implementers can obviously prioritize privacy. System implementers, software implementers can prioritize privacy. You have to be aware about what you do. I'm not asking everybody to read the entire privacy policies of everything that they do, but at least open the settings and try to understand what is going on. If you do that in ChatGPT, you can change a lot of things. You have a specific field that is on data control. You can improve the model for everyone, yes or no. You can export the data. You can manage the data that you share. Spend a few minutes. And if I want to bring some weight on us, let's keep talking about it. Let's encourage people to review your privacy settings. Don't accept everything just for the sake of, oh yeah, I'll figure it out later. No, spend a second and educate your friends, your peers, your family members about that. The way I convinced my daughter, 12 years old, to prompt ChatGPT in a different way, it's exactly with the trick that I made. Ask ChatGPT what it knows about you. And my daughter looked at me, oh my God, why the system knows all these things about me? So education, evangelism, speaking about the problem, raising the concern. You raised a very great concern at the beginning. You opened the CNN, right? And states should regulate AI. AI is powerful, fascinating, the future, and it's extremely dangerous. Don't see a nearby future where AI will kill human beings, but where people can get at least 20 times faster than before misinformation. Yeah. And that's why I think it's dangerous.
Dan, can I make an observation just as we're talking, because it's so apropos? So you sent me an email about an hour and a half ago with our talking points for today, and you mentioned Klarna. And we just discussed Klarna 40 minutes ago. I've never used Klarna. I never looked for Klarna. I've never had any interaction whatsoever. But 4 minutes ago, I got an email from eBay saying, hey, use Klarna to buy stuff on eBay. Sure, that's completely random and just putting it out there.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's a regular part of life now. I have fortunately I'm not doing anything too nefarious, but I've got, the Google TV now, right? So YouTube is integrated directly into my TV. And so every night I turn on my TV and my entire family knows what I did today because all the recommendations are based on what I did during the day, right? Yep. So, my daughter comes up to me and goes, Dad, why are you looking at all this boat stuff? Why are you looking at, right? She knows what I'm doing. So if she knows, obviously there's something going on there. And that's just one platform, right?
I can give you an extreme case. In my spare time, I have a passion for playing music and I DJ. A few weeks ago, my wife was showing me on her Instagram account a DJ, a woman DJ, very nice style music. And she told me, well, you should follow her. I said, well, yes, but I really don't like how she is interacting with the public. So no, thanks. Well, since then, on my Instagram, different account, I got more than one video from the same DJ. Similarly on Facebook, I say, oh, okay. So now something is going on also at the network level. Yes. So privacy is extremely important.
Giorgio, you will eat the bugs and you will like them.
You're right.
Giorgio, thank you so much for joining us. Really enjoyed the conversation, and love to have you on again in a few months, because a few months is a few years these days in this industry. But hey, thanks so much for joining us.
Again, thanks for having me, and yes, count me in anytime.
Excellent.
Chris, good show. Really great guest. Giorgio, a really interesting guy, and I feel like he may have even convinced you on a couple of things there. That doesn't usually happen, but apparently you're not the only one who doesn't read the entire end user license agreement on these websites.
I did this just there's an AI that some of my friends are using to like record meetings that we're having, and isn't it amazing? It gives you all these notes and stuff, and I bothered to dig up the privacy policy of the company, and it's absolutely horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Oh, we own it and blah, blah, blah. It has been a way of life for a quarter of a century. It's led to the generation of $15 trillion ish of wealth, and the most powerful and largest, most valuable companies humanity's ever created. So maybe that's a good thing, and maybe it's not. Right? To his point, and I think we kind of touched on this before, AI it's like any other technology we've come up with. Like plutonium. Is plutonium good or bad? Well, what's your use case, right? I can think of some really good use cases, Voyager going and exploring the solar system. And I can think of, people in Nagasaki would tend to have a more negative viewpoint of the value of plutonium. So it's all use case dependent.
Interesting stuff. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We're actually off next week, but we'll be back Wednesday, June 4th. June, Chris, can you believe that? June 4th at
2025 is almost half over. What in the world?
Crazy, right? It's an AI world. It's accelerated. But if you're looking for help with anything, we've got a team of analysts like Chris. We're here for you. We offer free advice and recommendations on a variety of automation, AI, and digital transformation topics. Or if you're on the vendor side and you're looking to get your offer in front of our network, go to IRPAAI.com. In the meantime, have a great week, everybody. Take care, Chris. Thanks, buddy.
Yep.
All right, bye-bye.